Hello everyone and welcome to this month's KOFISI Connect podcast. It's International Women's Day soon, a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural and political achievements in women. On the 7th of March, we've got a member event at KOFISI Square, a workshop discussing what it's like being a working woman in 2024. The panellists come from a wide cross-section of business. They'll be sharing all their achievements, explaining how they, in inverted commas, made it, and also how best to mentor other women to ensure continued equity in the workplace and, of course, more importantly, perhaps, a greater representation of women further up the business ladder. Well, two of those ladies, I'm very excited to say, who are taking part in the workshop are here with me today. Thank you both. Perhaps I can ask you both to introduce yourselves, explain what it is you do, and then share a short but very significant story about what helped you get you where you are.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you.
It's lovely to be here. My name is Sheila Cadogan. I'm a lawyer by profession, and I'm the managing partner of a firm called Adroit Law. In the firm, we focus on corporate and commercial law, competition law, and family law issues. Should I give Lilly a chance to introduce herself?
Why don't you do a quick story first? Have you got one that comes off the top of your head?
Well, this is interesting because as I ended up in the legal field, actually, it was not a decision that I made. I wanted to be a medical doctor, but, I'm the type that if I see a gash wound, there are tears and, getting sick. So it was sort of like I was guided along the path by my parents to do a law degree. But in terms of being a trade lawyer, commercial lawyer, that was a decision that I made of my own choice. And I remember at the time my father was working in government and he used to buy Time magazine. And I'd read stories about the trade imbalance between African countries and the Western countries. And I thought, I think I can do something about this, foolishly, very naive. So I decided then to pursue a master's degree in trade and investment. And to be honest, it was with the support of my grandma. She paid for me to go to South Africa to do the degree, and I'm forever grateful. Yeah.
Well done. Well, bless you, Grandma.
Yeah.
And our next guest?
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Lilly Bekele-Piper. I am the founder of the Salam and Hello Media platform, which consists of a couple of different shows, a weekly show, a bi-weekly show, speaking engagement, strategic communications work that we do across the region. And it's similar, our stories are somehow similar, I think, this confluence of parental influence and family support. I would say I ended up in media. I always wanted to do media. Thought for sure I was headed to Oprah's studios one day.
Oh, wow.
But life has its own twists and turns. But if I think about an impactful story that helped me get to where I am today, I really think about doing graduate work similarly. And at the time, I had just had my twin sons in January and decided if I don't go back to school now, I may never do it because I already had a 2-year-old, then we had twins, and it just felt like the world was closing in on me, and I thought, I have to do it now. So 8 months after I had twins, I started a master's program at Harvard, and it really was my community around me, other women who were students as well, friends who just came and took care of my kids while I was in school. My husband was also in school at the time, and when I think back to that time, it really was the love and support of our community. It takes a village, as they say, who helped me get to that next step in my professional goals, which I really think has laid a foundation for my current work.
So really interesting two key themes there. I mean, support, family support and education has come through kind of quite strongly. How would you see the role, what role does education play in advancing the kind of in the empowerment of women? Who wants to take? Lilly, you go first.
Sure. I mean, I after getting my master's, I actually worked in education for almost 15, 20 years. I've taught kindergarten, first grade, worked in 3 different higher education institutions. And as Nelson Mandela said, the single most effective tool to change the world is education. And that could not be more true for young girls, older girls, any of us. Education really is that equalizer of circumstance and opportunity. And I'm a firm believer that talent is universal and opportunity is not. And so it's really incumbent upon us to widen opportunities for girls, for women, for young women to access education. And it's an exciting time to be alive. There's more and more educational resources, online learning, everything is at our fingertips, but there's still work to do, I think, in making sure that women are aware of the very many different ways that they can sharpen or improve their skills, wherever they are, in whatever industry.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking in the African context, there aren't many opportunities for women if you're not educated. Chances you'd be either married off very early at a young age or be doing back-breaking work, farming work. So definitely, as Lilly says, education is actually the game changer.
And also education within a kind of school context also provides kind of girls especially with that sort of slightly wider perspective of not necessarily what's just happening in the home, where you might have the sort of traditional roles of what women and men do, and it sort of broadens their horizons. Yeah. And so do you think that the International Women's Day is still a necessary thing? I mean, there have been some huge leaps and bounds. Do you think, Sheila, perhaps I can ask you, is it something that we should still, I suppose, celebrate?
Oh, definitely, by all means, because it enables us. I mean, we wouldn't be sitting here evaluating our backgrounds, and having this conversation, and we're looking forward to the chat we're having with other strong women, successful women next week. It gives us an opportunity to evaluate where we are as women, and also just to congregate and share stories, because otherwise we don't have that opportunity, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Your questions are actually just making me think back and remember, my grandmothers. I'm from Ethiopia. Neither one of my grandmothers could read. Brilliant women, raised families, ran businesses, but could not write their names. And I think about days like International Women's Day, like you said, force us to pause, reflect. How far have we come? How much more do we have to do? And even back to the education point, thinking about how are there ways that we can bring what is available down to where it matters, and let the communities that are engaging actually inform what it is they want. What do women actually want? What do they need in 2024 to achieve whatever their goal is in front of them, be it business or personal? What do they need? And I think days like this force us to ask those questions and call the international community to accountability and reflect. If we still look at the data, it's still alarming, the gap in pay between women and men. Yeah. And then if you dial that down further between women of African descent and non-Black women, that there's another pay gap. Yeah. There's still so many goals that we have yet to realize, and until we realize them, days like this are necessary. Yeah.
Do you think anyone's listening? Do you think the government here can change be affected?
Well,
am I stepping into hot water here?
Not at all. It's a good question, actually. I don't know what initiatives, especially the Kenyan government, has around International Women's Day, but I know they have taken certain action, especially through the new constitution, to, for instance, focus on bringing in more women into political leadership. There have been initiatives in the past, such as the Women's Fund, and also creating affirmative action policies that allow women to access certain government opportunities that are not there. So in a sense, the government is making strides. I think also development partners, you see a lot of, I remember when I was doing some work in South Africa on gender and trade, at the time, there wasn't a focus on what was the role of women in gender. But you see people like Trademark now and other development organizations are really targeted in trying to bring gender inclusion into value chains. So maybe Lilly, I don't know.
No, I would agree. I think people are listening. If I think about recent events, the two contexts I feel most comfortable speaking to, Nairobi and then the U.S., last month there were over 10,000 of us marching in CBD, which did shut down the business district to demand that legislatures, parliamentarians, our leadership listen to the demands of women, that we be safer where we are. And we are seeing as a result of that there has been some action from the government to set up better channels for reporting, for accountability. I think the next step is some changes to the Constitution in terms of defining and including femicide and language around gender-based violence. It's specifics there. If I look at the United States, there has been a lot of political protest around, for example, taxes on feminine hygiene products. There was, within the last 5 years, you could get a condom and there was no tax. You get a tampon, you're taxed. That has changed, and that's because women have organized and demanded equity, both at the market as well as, in government. And so it's burdensome to continue to ask women to advocate for the changes we need when we're living it. You're both living it and advocating for change. That's a lot to do. But I do think they're listening, and we just have to keep speaking.
And it's great, you know, for the youth, I suppose, coming through when they see the marches that you were talking about in Nairobi, and on social media, you know, the with women sort of advocating for their rights, and it shows that something like International Women's Day, you know, needs. I mean, it might change a bit. Its essence, things that need to be promoted, or things that need to be, you know, tilted towards. I think it's a very important day for me in that respect.
Yeah, my niece told me 2 weeks ago. And like when I was in school, we did not have any conversations about gender. She's only in primary school, and they're learning about gendered roles. And she came home very upset about, you know, one of our class teachers had asked for one of the girls to tidy up the cupboard. And Abigail was affronted. Why does it have to be a girl to tidy the cupboard?
Well done.
And I said, why did you think that's wrong? She said, but another teacher had told us that we should not have this kind of, you know, roles. So, yeah, so something is happening.
Well, that's great.
Also in the
That's
education
great.
space, yeah.
Do you think that men then can be allies? Was there a boy, was one of her friends, a school boy, did he say, do you know what, I'll do it, I think that's true, or we shouldn't all be, it shouldn't be the girls who just clean out the cupboards? Do you think that men can be our allies in the fight for women's rights?
They must be. They must be.
They need.
We cannot do it without
Yes.
them. No, we have to have them along our sides. And like you said, you know, when we marched last month, there were many men there. Should have been more. And I was actually a bit annoyed. I felt like the media lauded those men more than, as I said, I was like, where else should they be?
Yeah,
Should they
true.
be here?
No, that's true. Their husbands, their brothers.
Doesn't it affect them?
Yeah.
But absolutely, they must be allies. They can be allies. You know, one of the T-shirts I remember seeing at the march was, it said "Protect your daughter," and that was scratched out, and it said "Educate your sons." And I think that's a message that we're hearing more and more. I think even, like you said, the shifts and the language around advocating for gender equity is changing. We're changing, instead of saying to women, you know, be stronger, you can do anything you want. We're saying, and men, champion women in those spaces where their voices are not heard, speak, stand, demand alongside us. So they can be allies. They might need some education themselves, but we need them.
Yeah, we definitely need them, because you also don't want to cause a rift, especially like when you find at the workplace or in the political environment where people feel that women are more favored than women. And basically what you're doing is trying to claim things that have not been given to us for so long, you know, but there's this feeling of disenfranchisement by men. So we need them to be allies. Yeah.
And what about the more marginalised groups of women in the, you know, other parts of society? How can a day like the 8th of March reach them? Is that a challenge?
Great question. I mean, I think the theme this year, in fact, is inspiring inclusion for International Women's Day, and that inclusion is critical, I think. You know, the fact that we're here talking and having this conversation, I'm sure it's sitting with you as well, Sheila, that, you know, who is not here at the table, who are we not representing, and whose voices are still begging for amplification. And it's daunting to think about that. I think we're both, again, living the experience of women, and then we're also trying to advocate for the women we know and love and those who are not here. And that's a lot to think about, which is why we need everyone to be a part of the solution. Yeah. That said, I think as in the African context, we have a ways to go about including queer women, about women with disabilities, women who are poor, who don't access language or resources in the same ways that we do in urban centers. Yeah. There's a lot that we have to do. I think the statistics are still that 80% of women or people live in rural spaces in the continent, and that's soon going to change. There's a huge urbanization, but in the meantime, we have to continually bring them to the table and represent their voices as best as we can, and then be students ourselves and charge ourselves with learning more than we do know about the communities that we ourselves are maybe not members of.
Yeah. And maybe just to add to that, Lily, maybe also a challenge to us as women sitting here who are slightly better off than the others is also to do. You know, it's one thing to advocate, but it's another to sort of help your house manager lift her up.
Absolutely.
Or someone in the village support their education. So it's also a challenge, a day like this, is what are you doing in an individual capacity?
And that was bringing me on to my sort of next question in a business context and in the workplace. Do you feel that in your law firm there is equity in the workplace? Are there just as many men
I
as there are
more
women?
women than I have men.
You do?
I've just hired a man. The neighbors in the building were asking me, are there no men working? But he was like, well, we haven't found one to sort of fit in the team.
Amazing.
Yeah, so we are a team of 6 ladies and 1 gentleman.
Wow.
Yeah, just by coincidence. It wasn't by design, but there we are. Yeah.
But you see, it's not by design, but maybe it was by design of just the skills and that you needed,
Yes.
and those happen to maybe better represented in women
Yes.
in law. I don't know, but I think there's something to be said for a culture that you create like that. It's quite powerful, actually. And for our team, my immediate team is also all women, and our technical partners happen to be all men. It's an interesting
It's funny, isn't
combination.
it?
Yeah. And I would say it's at times a really happy marriage and that conversation. We often, after we record an episode, that, again, maybe not by design centered gender, but it came up in the conversation. Oftentimes our technical team, our crew will say, I learned a lot from this episode. We did one with some educators, and they were talking about having Afrocentric education and patriarchy-free education, and they were just really brilliant. And one gentleman who was our director on set that day went home and said, I have to change how I'm parenting my kids. Like, it just really struck him by what the things they said. So I think that symbiotic relationship is really important. We learn hopefully from each other, and sometimes we learn just by the doing. What we do, how we live is the best teacher.
Yeah.
And I think also, I mean, we talked a bit at the beginning about education, but I think that it's in what you were just saying there, Lily, is that the language is so important as well, a business language. Because if I'm a small business owner looking for investment, you know, I'm a journalist by trade, and then, you know, and I've always been in communications. I would not know where to start. I have not been empowered in kind of financial terms, financial language, you know. So, and I think that those sorts of key things, I don't know whether it's sort of slightly, my husband knows exactly how to phrase those things, you know. I mean, but I don't understand how that kind of got lost in my journey. Do you think it's something that more women should learn about, or do you feel like there are sort of gaps in their training or education, or is that just me?
Let me not talk too much. You go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I have a different.
Go ahead. You're shaking your head.
Well, I'm just thinking about the experiences I've had, and I remember a salary negotiation I went into, and I remember saying to my husband at the time, I'm going to ask for this amount, and he's like, well, you won't get that because that's just beyond the salary band, whatever. Then I talked to my best friend, another African woman. She's like, absolutely ask for that and more. And I did, and I got it.
Good.
And I thought how interesting also, because he wasn't saying I'm not worthy of it. It was his interpretation of what the market would give me based on any number of things.
Okay.
And it took, I think, another woman saying, be audacious about it.
Sure.
And at the same time, there are times where, again, I haven't asked for things, and then he'll say, why did you ask for that? Or he'll enter a room. I can think of times we've been in getting medical care for our kids, and, you know, he just walks in and he demands X, Y, Z. And I'm just like, can we please? And he's like, absolutely, I want to see this person at this time. I'm like, oh, I need to, there's a masculine energy at times that I have to find and channel. It's not what we've been taught by society. It's that soft lesson, those soft skills that have not been imparted to us, which is why it's so exciting that your niece is hearing in very clear language. There are gendered roles. You can resist them. She's gotten that message at such a young age. For sure, I did not get that lesson, and I'm having to learn it.
I think what I'd like to say to that, Georgina, is I think there's also strength in our femininity. There is strength in actually not channeling the masculine energy, because you know, my husband is a strong personality, and in my previous job where I wasn't treated very well, I'd come home and lament about something, and he'd just be so straightforward, you know, just get out of there, or do this or do that, very instructional, which is not what I needed, you know. And men tend to be that way, you know, whereas women are more empathetic, more emotional, and even in a business setting, and that's the way you're built, there's nothing absolutely wrong with that. In fact, it could be, you know, a strength. So in my experience, and also in my farm, I try as much as possible. I'm strong when I need to be strong, but at the same time, I'm happy to show my emotions. Yeah, and I don't try to be like a man or to do things like a man. I'm just who I am. if I'm going to cry tears as I communicate something, that's just who I am, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
For me, I think it's about having all the tools in the toolbox.
Yeah.
I think that's for me what I'm trying to do, is that I don't want to go into any situation, business or professional, with only some set of schools that culture has said, this is now your role. If we just take it to the home front, there are times where in settings and a personal setting where you're expected to respect elders or to get the tea. Sure, I have no problem respecting my elders, but now I'm teaching my son, when we have guests, you get the tea. You have them sit down. There's also that things that I'm trying to course correct, because I want to have in my toolbox, and I want my kids to have in their toolbox, every skill at their disposal, every strategy at their disposal. And I think for me that was missing when I was growing up.
Yes, and I used to get called bossy at school when actually, I think I would have liked to have thought of myself as assertive. And I think that's something that I'm key. Is key to pass down. I love that. Be audacious. That was it. I'm going to take that home. So just a little bit more about mentorship as well. What role could we play? As kind of women who are slightly, who've made it up the greasy pole or the business ladder, whatever it is, who, I wouldn't say that I'm shattering the glass ceiling, but equally there is a role that women in opposition can play to help others. How do you see that work? Do you, Sheila, have a mentorship program, or is there an...
Oh, dear me.
Or is there someone you'd like to mentor? Are there places that you could, that you can see yourself helping girls in different situations?
I think by the kind of nature of the profession, we are required, the legal profession, we are required to mentor. So we have what we call like a pupil program. So it's a structured internship where we have to take on lawyers who want to qualify as advocates, and they spend 6 months with us. So in that sense, at the workplace, I am mentoring actually a girl who just joined us in February. In addition to that, sort of like through pro bono initiatives, sitting on boards or being part of NGOs that are mentoring girls. I'm part of an NGO that focuses on STEM. Science and technology subjects in high schools. So that kind of mentorship. But I personally have not had mentorship.
Oh, you haven't had it?
I would love it.
So your grandmother helped you.
Exactly. By seeing, just by watching what she was doing. But I've never really had like that guided hand in my career. Yeah.
I think it's always good to have a mentor. Yeah. Someone just to talk to and sort of, someone who,
I'd love that.
A mentorship program. Maybe we could start one.
Yes. I would love it too.
I think mine's called a therapist. But
informal mentor. I was just thinking how, though, as women, we informally mentor people all the time.
Yes.
I cannot tell you how many people have sent me their CV. Can you just look at this? Can you just give me a little bit of feedback? So we're doing it all the time, whether it's formal or informal, and it's part of the emotional labor that women carry in, just 20-30% more than men. I can't remember what the exact data is around that. But we're doing it all the time, and it's, I think, again, part of our energy that we bring. The feminine energy looks around and looks to see who's next to me, who can I bring with me, and I think that's such a beautiful thing that I hope we never lose. And at the same time that we can balance it and learn to say no, because I think for me at this point, I've kind of put some barriers up for the first time in my life, just to say, no, boundaries, that's the word. Just to say, okay, I can only, hang out with 2 or 3 people, because I need to be a little bit more selfish, which again doesn't come naturally, but I think is necessary sometimes when you have audacious goals.
Absolutely. And children. Well, brilliant. Lily, Sheila, thank you so much for joining me today. If you want to hear more on this discussion, then please join us on the 7th of March at KOFISI Square, where, Lily, you will be adjudicating.
Really looking forward to it.
Wonderful. Oh, we can't wait to have you back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jujita.
Thank you, Sheila.